This episode is brought to you by BigMooseCoffeeCompany.co. Pals, greetings and welcome to another episode of Everything Endurance. It is, as always, exceptionally wonderful to have you with us today. Thank you for allowing me into your ears and eyes. I've got a great set of guests for you today. A set of guests, yes, more than one. This does happen from time to time. We teed this up a few weeks ago, actually, while we were talking to Damian Hall about his various exploits this year. We did a quick snippet chatting to these guys about a film which was about to come out. It's out now, and it's wonderful. The film in question is obviously totally FKT. It's a 50-minute long documentary that covers John Kelly and Damian Hall's amazing exploits on the Pennine Way this summer. And if you're one of those people that listens to this while you're out running, then you can probably ignore this next instruction. But if you're sitting at home now, pause this, then go and find the link in the description, watch the film, then come back, okay? Because you won't regret it. The film is fantastic. It manages to do, and this is credit to these wonderful videographers, it manages to sort of show you the amazing, I'm not going to be ruining the ending here by revealing that FKTs are broken, but it shows you the amazing feeling of achieving this incredible feat. But it really does justice to the hardship and the sacrifice along the way and in the build-up to doing something as massive as this. It shows a tremendous amount of respect for Mike Hartley, the guy that held the record for 31 years before John Kelly and Damian Hall came along. It does that incredibly well, and it really shows respect to the big teams around these exceptional athletes, the people that they have to have around them to keep them going while they pull off these incredible records that we so enjoy them doing. So we're going to be going into the ins and outs of how you go about making a film like this and tell you a little bit about the film itself. But also we're going to be going a bit further than that. We're going to be talking to them about why it is they do what they do. How have they ended up being these adventure videographers? What did they get out of showing the world what these amazing athletes are doing out there? I've had the pleasure of working with these guys for the last few years, working behind the scenes, doing coverage of the Spine Race. If any of you have seen any of the video footage of the Spine Race and heard that dramatic, wonderful Game of Thrones style theme tune that starts all of those videos, then you'll know who these guys are already and you'll have seen their work. They tell the story of what these amazing elite runners are doing, but also the runners further down the field. They capture their moments as they go through these incredibly tough races and shows you the massive highs and the massive lows along the way. And we're going to go into what keeps them motivated and why they keep doing what they're doing when they're standing ankle deep in freezing mud for 3 hours waiting for a runner to arrive so they can shoot 2 minutes of video. I think you're going to find this really interesting. I know I did. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce our guests. And our guests today are, quite obviously, Matt and Ellie from Summit Fever. Matt, Ellie, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. How are you?
No, I'm very, very well, thank you. I'm particularly excited because there's been a few times in the past on this podcast where we've said out loud on record that we're gonna follow this up later and record another podcast with these people, or we're gonna do this, and then life gets busy and we don't manage to tie it together, and boom, here you are. A few episodes back, I said we'd speak again, and we've done it. So I'm very excited to be talking to you today. Also, I'm very excited because I've watched Totally FKT, the film that you guys have put together, and it's brilliant. I've seen the positive response you've had to the film online. Really, you've got to be happy about that.
Yeah, well,
Yes.
really, really happy. Like, especially with these longer projects, we put a lot of blood, sweat, time, late nights, early mornings into making it, and you get really attached to it, and you really want people, like we really wanted people to like it, so it was quite a relief, I think, in a lot of ways.
And I think with the longer projects, by the time you finish the edit, you can no longer stand back and look at it impartially, so you've no idea really whether it's any good or not. And so all you can do is just like send it off into the ether and then hope that
it's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, luckily I can reassure you at this point that it is beyond all right. It is, in fact, very, very good. Also, for the benefit of those who are just listening to this back and not watching on YouTube, Ellie just had the longest 1,000-yard stare I've ever seen as you were describing the editing process. You look shell-shocked. Like, you've been editing it, you've just been staring at it for so long. And But it must be. I don't know if anyone who hasn't worked in this environment can understand the cold terror of releasing something this big into the world and seeing how the world responds to it afterwards. So, yeah. And well done, guys. It's an amazing project you've managed to put together. How long does something like this actually take to put together? Start to finish, from having the idea to getting it released. How much work would go into this?
Well, I think with this project in particular is a bit unique because really it started, it's about 8 years ago. Well, the seed of it started about 8 years ago when we first interviewed Mike Hartley in regards to the spine race. And we spoke to him because he's the record holder on the Pennine Way. And that kind of, so 8 years ago that started. And then we've been filming, or we've been involved with various attempts on the Pennine Way to break the record since then, haven't we? And
we'd got to know Damian over the years, and we were aware that it was on his radar, but he wasn't sure when he was going to do it. So I think, things were sort of like trickling for quite a number of years. And then I think basically 2020 hit, John and things all started like rapidly moving really quickly, didn't they? Like John and Damian were talking about doing it like pretty much straight away. We were suddenly like, oh, okay, right, we need to get ourselves together here. This could be something really special. And so then it was a quick case of getting our team together to try and cover it and like organise how we were going to do it, what logistics elements there were. And then obviously the 2 weeks of the attempts themselves. And then after that, just
lots of interviews.
Oh yeah, interviews before we'd started editing before we'd finished filming.
Yes, because it was with quarantining and self-isolation and various tier systems, it was we had a deadline of Kendal Mountain Festival, and it was getting closer and closer, and then somebody would go into self-isolation, someone else would go into a different tier, so we had to push back the filming.
Oh, of course. I'd thought about the sort of extra layer of difficulty that the pandemic would put in terms of the logistics of the event itself, but you've got months of trying to tie these interviews together around the story as well. Like, no, they've gone tier 3 now, so you'll have to talk to them in a month's time. Like, yeah, that must have made your deadline loom even taller than it was already.
Yeah. But I think with if you've got a deadline, I don't think I know anybody, and Will, I bet you could probably relate to this, but I don't think anybody finishes way before the deadline. I think if you've got a deadline, you'll be eking out every last little second of that deadline.
Also, what was the implication there? Like, Will, you strike me as someone who leaves things till the last minute. I mean, you're not wrong, but no, absolutely. If someone tells you you've got this much time to do something like this, especially a creative project where you're putting so much into it, there really is no end point. I don't know if anyone's ever given me a filming project or a photography project or even a podcast episode that I would go back to afterwards and not change completely. It's never finished. Somebody just has to tell me when to stop working on it and hand it in.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. It's tough.
But I guess, I'm sorry, just to answer your question, really quickly,
we should probably do that.
6 months.
Wow.
Apart from the actual filming and editing process, probably took about 6 months.
Yeah, but the last month felt like 6 months as well.
Yeah. So, 6 months would probably go.
Yeah. And I guess this is the bit that people miss, isn't it? If you describe yourselves to people as, we're adventure videographers, it's like, that sounds amazing. Like, yeah, we've worked out in the Arctic, we've been up in the far north of Norway or wherever you guys have been. We've been up and down the Pennine Way a dozen times. It all sounds amazing and very, very glamorous, but when you dig into it, for every week you've spent out there in somewhere amazing, you've spent a month in a cave, hunched over a laptop, editing that film together afterwards. Is this the cave itself? Are we seeing the editing suite?
Yeah, welcome to the cave. And it is actually a cave where the only window for the office looks like up to the sky.
The window is like up there.
And that makes sense. So there's as few distractions as possible while you are editing away.
Yeah, pretty well.
Yeah, it makes sense. So while the guys are out there on the course, obviously there's an awful lot of logistical planning that has to go in on their side to figure out, and especially John, they really touch on this in the film, is his sort of data scientist's approach to planning meticulously every detail of what's going to happen. It must have to be similar from your side as well. Like, I've seen you guys work. For those who don't know, if you've ever watched one of the daily videos of the Spine Race and heard that Game of Thrones style theme tune start up, then you have seen Matt and Ellie's work. They've been the people covering the spine for how many years now?
2013 was our first year.
Yeah, what's it? 7 years.
That's a long time on the Pennine Way.
It's a really long time on the Pennine Way.
Aside from anything else, that made you guys the obvious choice to do a project like this, because you must know every single lay-by where you can get decent 4G. Every place you can top up camera batteries on the fly between filming locations. Every road head along the way for the best locations to run in and grab drone shots. You must have accumulated an encyclopedic knowledge of that route by now, right?
We have a very geeky knowledge of the Pennine Way.
But it's also like, it's quite... I feel like often Ellie and I will be talking about places, say we're like on the event or something, and we'll be like, oh yeah, we'll go to the, the cattle grid gate at the top by the thing, and we'll know what we're talking about, and someone else will be like, where is that? I'll be like, oh, it's near Malham, just
the cattle grid.
Yeah, the gate at the gate at the top.
There's a really good stone there.
And they're just like, well, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay, so it's not a useful roadmap of the Pennine Way that you've got in your head, but ideal. But during the event itself, then, how does that look for you? Because I've seen you tearing around behind the scenes on the Spine Race, and we've worked together like the last 3 of those now, and you've seen me grab an hour and 45 minutes sleep under a table somewhere every 24 hours. Like,
I
it's
saw you underneath like a pile of down jackets in the corner at one point.
Look, if there's a quiet moment and no one's paying attention, I'll crawl under anything and grab 20 minutes sleep. They're long days when you're doing something like that. But when you are covering something that is going on 24 hours a day, what does that look like for you and your team?
So I think when we first started, it was rewinds maybe 7 years ago, we were a lot more haphazard. We'd do a lot of planning beforehand, but then you have this fear of missing out what's going to happen. But when you're on the road for, say, 10 days covering, because it does turn out to be 10 days on the spine, you need to make sure that you're safe. So we've got quite a good system now, and with Totally FKT, we had Steve Ashworth with us in another car so that we could all leapfrog almost in terms of sleep. So we tried to get probably at least 4 hours of sleep at some point during the day each, whether that was catching, half an hour here or there. And it turned out that whereas one of us might have been at a low point, the other 2 could step in and go, okay, right, you get your head down for an hour or 45 minutes or something, and the other 2 will take over. And so you work in this. And we've worked with Steve on quite a lot of jobs now, so we know, we can tell when one of us needs a bit of help or needs a bit of extra assistance, and so we work in this little cog machine type thing.
And I think like there's prep work now that we'll do, that we've sort of gained from experience, in terms of, particularly with regard to the Pennine Way FKT. We knew that over that duration of time that they were going to be going through, that there were like going to be pretty much guaranteed, like, I guess you could describe them as like hotspots. That's, if something's going to go wrong, it's probably going to go wrong in this period. And
in this location.
Yeah, and I'm sure, you know, all the like racers and stuff that are listening will be familiar with these points. You know, often sort of periods of changing light, sort of going from like twilight and stuff like that, and particularly sort of second day, second night. That's where things are going to happen. So we sort of try to work our schedule not just around where they're going to be, but also where there's likely to be something that's happened. Like, when do we need to be on point, and when can we go, okay, well, it's unlikely in the first, say, 100 miles that anything major is going to happen. But so we can sort of adjust our level of coverage and how we're covering it, so we save ourselves for when stuff, going to happen.
Yeah, for when they're going to be their most FKT'd. It makes perfect sense. You've already called the documentary that.
Yes.
Yeah, pretty much.
And that must have been quite daunting at the beginning of this project, that you didn't know how it was going to go, right? This record has stood for 31 years, and we all know, anyone listening to this knows that John and Damian, in their various ways, are both exceptional athletes. Like, if anyone was going to bag this record this year, hearing they were both going at it, for me, it was a question from the start of, if they get conditions that are right, one of them will have the record, at least. And then they both got it, one after the other, which is just tremendous for you guys. What a win for you. But, I mean, there must have been times during the creation of this where you're thinking, oh, no, like, I don't know if they're going to be able to do this. And what would that have meant for the film? Would you have pushed on? Does it then become a film about Mike Hartley?
I think...
The story is always... I think we always try and make sure that we're led by the story and what happens.
Yeah.
And definitely before covering it, and covering something like this where there's so many uncertain outcomes, we try and sort of think about, okay, what are the different options that could happen here, and how can we manipulate those into a credible and interesting storyline. And we felt that, along with the sort of ability of both John and Damian, which gave them a good chance of being able to do something, we knew that it was going to take a lot to stop them. And so we knew there was going to be a good story there, whatever happened. It wasn't like, Damian was going to go, oh, I've run out of blue jelly babies. That's it. I'm done.
They would push themselves to the very edge of what they're capable of to try and break this record. And it sounds really corny, as I can hear it in my mind now, but a lot of the time it's not always about the finish. I mean, the journey is the story. And whether getting to the line, breaking the record, that's an exciting unknown for everybody. So, and it's just part of the story. So if they didn't, that would be part of the story as well. Well, hopefully they'd get more than 10 miles, because then there wouldn't be much of a story. But, the attempt itself is part of the story.
Having said that, I just can't believe how lucky we were that how things turned out. Like, a 31-year-old record, like 31 years, like what was broken, and then a week later broken again. Like, how often does that happen? I'm not even aware of any other. I know there'll be loads of new records set this year.
2,800 apparently.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. That's a lot, isn't it?
Wow, that's incredible.
That's not including Strava segments either.
I thought I'd interviewed a fair few record breakers this year, but I've interviewed like 0.3%. I've been slack. Wow. Is this part of what keeps you coming back for it then? Is those moments? Because, you know, don't get me wrong, there may be other videographers out here listening to this thinking, well, you could do videos of weddings and be much more comfortably better off than you are at the moment, rather than sleeping in laybys for 15 minutes at a time, filming people in mud. But what you get to tell is much more interesting stories. You got to be there when that happened, and you get to convey that story to the world. Is that part of what keeps you going back and doing this sort of thing?
Yes,
definitely.
I'm glad you said that, because you'd have come across really miserable if you'd have said that. like, actually, we're thinking of starting up a wedding video business.
No way.
It's exciting, and I think there's this. It's telling stories. We love listening to stories. We love watching stories, reading stories, and I love telling stories. And I love being there and documenting, and it's exciting. It's in the moment, and especially with something like, and it's a privilege, real privilege, especially with something like this, with so much history behind it, especially in the running world. It's a real privilege to be able to document these incredible athletes doing these mind-blowingly. I think almost you become a bit. I don't know what you think, Will, to this, but you know, when I'm not an ultra runner, really. I'm not like, you know, I can watch what Damian and John do and all these incredible athletes do and really appreciate it. But I think when you work alongside them, it's hard to step back and see how incredible that is. You know, you throw away things like Matt said earlier, you know, 100 miles, you know, they're going to be okay over 100. 100 miles?
Yes.
That's incredible. Somebody, and it's just like, oh yeah, we know they're going to be fine for the first 100 miles and at least running non-stop for the first 24 hours. And it's almost a kind of a throwaway comment. That's incredible.
I completely agree. I have to remind myself 10 times a day in my work that the stories we're telling people here, we're not just talking to other ultra runners. That for a lot of people out there listening to these stories, the idea of running 10 miles is huge. And we're here throwing stuff around going, well, Damian and John will be fine for at least the first 100 miles, so we don't need to worry too much about covering them there. What? That's superhuman.
Yeah.
But we get to be there and see that. And I don't know. You said about, you know, it moments and you getting to be there when these things happen. It's a big part of why I keep doing this. It's a big part of why I will keep going back to work on the spine. Jasmine Paris taking 12 hours off the spine course record. I'll never forget that. I don't. It's one of the most exciting moments.
You know, you talking about that now gives me
absolutely. It makes me tingle thinking about it. How excited. I mean, desperately sleep deprived, but how excited we all were when that happened, when she actually hit the wall. Yeah. Absolutely amazing, and we got to be there. And that is a big part of the reason why I keep doing this, but it means that you are bringing more people into that moment as well. They get to share a certain amount of that energy through your work. And I don't know if that's part of your guys' motivation, but that's certainly part of the reason I keep rabbiting onto people on this podcast and, you know, going out and doing photography on events. It's that I want as many people as possible to be able to share a little bit of that moment, because I happen to think what these guys do is incredible. I'm a fan.
I think it's also you know, it's the elite performances are definitely amazing things to see. Like, we've been really lucky to see some seriously like bonkers things. You know, like Killian's BG and like the various different FKTs and stuff. But I also really enjoy interacting with people and recording the stories on events of not just the elite runners, but the other runners that are in the field, because they're all putting in their own, like they're all fighting against the most that they can put in, every single one of them. And like, you know, whether it's the story of like, I can't remember which year it is now because they all kind of blend, but like when Satoshi, we followed the Japanese athlete Satoshi on the spine race, and he came across another athlete who'd had an injury and had to stop and was starting to suffer from hypothermia. And so Satoshi stopped and helped him out, waited with him until the support crew came. And then he tried to carry on, but unfortunately, even with a time credit, he wasn't able to carry on. And just seeing how, you know, like he just kept going and kept going and kept going.
Even though he was on that limit, on that time limit.
Oh my goodness, like so close to the edge. Or like on Expedition Amundsen, a ski race in Norway, Ellie met a team of British women who were taking part in just like, they weren't at the pointy end, but the way that the weather systems had worked out, everyone in the back half was being absolutely savaged by this storm. And, you know,
they just kept on going. Nothing stopped them.
Yeah.
And I think it is really inspiring. And you look at, I mean, the time we've interviewed Damian, like you have, Will, over kind of quite a number of years. And
yeah,
I mean, he started running seriously in his 30s. And so being able to tell that story, and look where he is, look where he's got himself to now. And I think that it's easy to watch films and listen to podcasts and read articles and look at photos of elite athletes and think, I can't do that. But you can. I mean, everybody, it's inspiring to see that they've not just been born with this. Okay, maybe they might have some kind of maybe predisposed to long distance or endurance or pain threshold, but on the whole, they've worked and worked and worked over so many years, kind of slogging away, going from 5Ks to 10Ks, 10 miles, half marathons, ultramarathons, and they've worked their way up. And I think that's a really inspiring story. And I think, and I hope it kind of encourages other people. I've certainly watched and read things and thought, oh, okay, that's something I didn't realize that person had started at that point. Maybe I'll go out for a run today. You know, and maybe it's only like, I don't know, 5K, 10K or whatever. But it's
I completely agree. Completely. You know, I interviewed Mark Bowman on this podcast. I've interviewed John Kelly and Damian Hall. I've interviewed people who've done these absolutely gargantuan, superhuman seeming challenges. And you can't expect everyone listening to them to think, hey, Damian was in his 30s and now he's in his early 40s and he's still one of the greatest ultra runners on the planet at the moment. Maybe I can do that. Not everyone's going to be able to do that, but it might make you more likely to join that 10K you've been thinking about, or just to go out and do a bit more walking in the hills.
Yeah.
And I think that's the other thing that the kind of coverage that you guys create does is draw more attention to these beautiful places, and gives them a value by doing that. You didn't just tell the story of John Kelly and Damian Hall by releasing this film. You've also raised the profile again of the Pennine Way itself, which, you know, you've been working on it for that many years now. It's a bewitching place, every bit of the Pennine Way, even the horrible boggy bits we all swear about. It's got a charm to it, and I think that comes across in this film.
I think it's a wonderfully.
I mean, you can tell me if I've misinterpreted this, but from watching that film, some of the big drone sweeps and landscape shots and stuff, it comes across that you guys have a real passion for the outdoors, for that environment, that you do think those areas are beautiful. Don't ruin it for me now and tell me you're actually really jaded and just pointing the camera at it.
No, it is a beautiful place, and I think it's nice to be able to remember that there are still those big, vast areas of land, and I wouldn't say wilderness, but wilderness-like places in Britain that are easy to get to, accessible. I mean, the Pennine Way is pretty accessible to a lot of people. You're close to Sheffield, to Manchester, to Newcastle, and it's all on your doorstep, and it's beautiful that that's out there and available for everybody to go and see and play in and get the benefits of.
And I do feel like the Pennine Way as a route seems to have more of a personal impact on people that do it than a lot of other trails that I'm aware of. And, you know, we have worked on other trails and followed, you know, people on doing lots of different adventures. But the Pennine Way, you know, particularly, like, you look at perhaps it's a combination of the landscape and the exposure that you have to endure to do it, is that you really are, you can't think about, oh my God, have I paid my water bill? Like, you've got to worry about eating, drinking, staying warm, staying dry, trying to keep your feet dry for 5 minutes. Like, it focuses you so much internally that I think it really has, like, it can have quite a profound, and I don't think it's exaggerating to say it, I think it does have a profound impact on people that do it. You look at the spine race, there are people that have done the spine race that come out of it, leave their jobs, they leave their whole, like, the life that they once led, they come back, and, like, there have definitely been several people that I'm aware of that have been like, I went back to work and I was like, what the hell am I doing? What am I doing? And I think it puts puts a certain perspective on things. And I'm sure, you know, it's definitely that sensation isn't just to do with the Pennine Way. It's something that you can get out of doing any kind of big challenge, particularly any physical challenge. But I think the Pennine Way maybe has it heightened because it is so, like, it can be beautiful, but by God, it can be punishing. I've seen people say to me, oh, you know, you film the spine race. Do you ever think you'll do the spine race? No, I've seen too much. No way.
It's funny you bring that up. I get asked it all the time because I'm often the guy at the finish line interviewing people, or, you know, at least around when it's happening. And people come to me and say the same thing. Oh, are you going to enter next year? No.
No?
Are you insane?
Too much.
I've seen every bit of suffering up and down this trail. Like, I've been there while it's happened, and that's fine. I'm happy to watch other people do it. That sounds really flippant, but actually I get so much out of being on my side of these events. I get so much out of telling the stories of the people that are doing this. I'm not ruling it out. Sooner or later, somebody is going to guilt me into actually training again and taking a go at the Pennine Way, which I guess I've now said on record.
Yeah.
If Chris King is listening to this, he'll have recorded that bit. He'll have it on his phone already, and he will play it back to me over and over again until I do it. But it's not what it's about for me. I love being on this side. I love telling the stories, and I still get to be out there seeing these beautiful places, and it's a challenge in of itself. You can't tell me that spending 20 hours a day ankle deep in freezing mud waiting for somebody to run over a hill and film them isn't taxing in and of itself, but you still get a great deal of reward out of it.
Yes. It's massive, huge amount of reward for all that. All the kind of soggy, drenched cold hanging around for, I don't know, sometimes they're there for about 5 hours with no signals, so you can't check the trackers, and you're thinking, oh, we missed this person. What do we do? Do we hang around for a bit longer or and risk it? Have they gone through? Haven't they got through? And then they arrive, and then you're kind of straight away, the adrenaline goes and you're telling the story again, and all that hanging around and cold feet and, you know, niggles and stuff are forgotten, and you're back in the moment, and all cylinders go.
Yeah, particularly, situations like that were regular on, like, when we filmed Damian and Beth doing the Cape Wrath Trail, setting a new record on that landscape. I mean, the Pennine Way, we're really lucky in that the access is really good and all this kind of stuff. But, like, Cape Wrath's so remote, such a vast landscape. Like, there were some places that I think we got permission to drive down some gamekeeper tracks, which took like a 5-hour hike off, but we still had a 3-hour hike on top of that to get into where we needed to be.
Then you come away with 3 minutes of footage.
Yeah.
But it's worth it.
It's a great 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And you are showing people stuff that could not have been shown to them back when Mike Hartley did this record the first time, for instance. I know we're not talking about the dark ages. People had video cameras, but we weren't consuming this kind of stuff in the same way back then. Like, your film may not have had a platform back when Mike Hartley first did his run, but now it has, and it can, and you can show the people that want to see it these incredible things. So why wouldn't you? Right? I guess this brings me on the idea that for some people, it can seem a little intrusive that part of what they go out into the wilderness for is to be away from this hyper-connected world that we all live in.
Yeah.
But here we are out there telling these stories that wouldn't have been told otherwise.
It's a fine line, I think. Fine line balance. I mean, everyone we film like on a project like a record or an FKT, we do chat to them beforehand. We say, okay, so is there anything that is off limits? Are there any points, anything that annoys you that you don't want recording, don't want filming? And we make sure we've got that on the checklist, and we stick to that. Otherwise, cameras are always rolling because you never know what's going to happen. So you need to be.
You can always not use something that you recorded. Like there have been times on events where we've maybe recorded a rescue taking place or something like that, but we'll record it and then check afterwards with the people involved and the organisers and stuff to make sure that firstly we can use it and that we can display it in an appropriate way.
We've worked together on exactly that before during an event.
Yeah.
And I believe it was around the Satoshi incident you were describing before.
That was definitely one of them,
Yeah, and then there's phone calls go around backwards and forwards, and we make sure that every party involved is comfortable with what's happened before you'd ever move forward with something like that.
Yeah. And more often than, in fact,
I think in the Satoshi incident, the
Satoshi incident. It sounds like an episode of Big Bang.
In the Satoshi incident, I think the racer involved actually said, yes, please do use it, because I want to show how amazing the safety teams are on the spine race and what an incredible job they did.
Yeah.
Getting me out and getting me safely.
Yeah. Especially as like most people enter events, like spine race, like all these different events that are out there, and unless something happens like that, they're not aware of the infrastructure, the people and the processes that are standing by the whole time, 24 hours a day or however, whenever the event is active, to jump in there and provide assistance when it's necessary. And so, I think it's really important in a lot of respects to give those elements of stories as well as the athlete stories, and sort of show what the event's all about and what goes on, and a certain sense of appreciation for what the organisers put together.
Yeah, but that, I mean, just on a like, if somebody didn't want us to film, we wouldn't film.
Yeah,
it'd just be we've had people, not many, to say, actually, would you mind not filming me? And it's like, fine, okay. We'll note it between the team. We'll note the person, note the number, and say, right, this person's off limits, and that's fine.
I've been there, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Some people don't want their photos after the event. Some people do come to that place to be completely cut off.
Yeah. And we respect. I think we all respect.
I want the pictures. Like, if I haven't got anything to share on Instagram afterwards, there is no point in me going through that much suffering. But I get where these people are coming from.
Yeah, I think it's only happened 3 times in 9 years, and they were all related to the work that the person was doing
Oh, you mean spies?
A sensitive job. Whoa.
Presumably spies, secret agents of some sort. That's what I choose to believe when people tell me these things, or that they're in some kind of witness protection program.
Yeah.
It just makes things much more interesting. Okay, so fair enough. Obviously, totally FKT, you guys have... It's a different thing to filming during a race. You've been able to have really full conversations with the guys in advance. What's on limits? What's not on limits? Like, what can we film? And you are all up in everything. Like, we are involved in John Kelly's stomach woes during the event. Do you struggle with that as filmmakers? If you hear someone throw up, like if I hear someone throw up on a race now, there's a little bit of my brain that goes, turn your camera on. Which is not cool, because there's a much bigger part of my brain that's like, oh, I hope they're all right. I should really leave them alone. And that's a difficult balance. Are there ever times where you feel guilty covering what you're covering?
It sounds awful. Maybe when we started, but now it's more often than not. If we miss something like that, the person that we're filming at the end of it comes back to us and says, "Did you get that time when I was da 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 da?" And we're like,
"Yeah,
oh no, we were being sensitive." And I'm like, "Oh, I really wanted to see it." So I think we learned quite a few years ago that, as we said, like establish beforehand with the athlete what's on off limits. Otherwise, the general rule is we'll carry on filming. If for instance that person, if John had been alone somewhere and was really needed assistance, we would have obviously stepped it. We'd have gone to him. We wouldn't have just stood there watching him on the floor, kind of.
It's not a David Attenborough shoot. We don't. We're not going to leave him to die while we film.
However, we would have put the camera down somewhere where it was filming and gone and helped him.
No, I understand. The biggest part of your brain is, oh, there is a human suffering here and I should do something about it. But the cameraman in you has already turned on the on button, had a quick look at the settings, just to make sure.
Yeah. But I think, it is an interesting guy, because I mean, there were some times when John I've never seen a person's face genuinely look green before.
And this is, we're coming back to, because we veered quite wildly off here, but we've got in some really interesting territory. But to go back to Totally FKT a little for a second, how could that film have worked? How would it have had anywhere near the drama it had if you weren't showing the suffering that those athletes were going through? And then John suffered.
Yeah.
I think with any elite performance, whether it's 100 meters or 1,000 miles, it involves a lot of suffering
and sacrifice, even if that sacrifice isn't necessarily on the attempt itself.
Yeah,
to get to that level, there's always the human element getting to that level. They've really
had to dedicate themselves to being able to perform to that level, like seriously. And it's easy to watch the end result and
if there's no suffering
and just see this sort of like amazing performance. But what you don't see is the months and months and years often of toil, of dedication, despite, there are going to be days when they don't want to do what they need to do what is required. And they're human beings like all of us. Everyone's got up, knows the feeling of an alarm clock going off and going, I said I'd run this morning, it's raining and it's dark, really, I'm not sure about this. And it's those decisions where they go, right, I've got to go and do it. I want the results so much, I'm going to go and do the hard work.
So that so I guess if there isn't the suffering actually out there at the time, if you don't show it in the film, there is. I think we were on a tangent from your original question, but there's always with these performances, there's sacrifice and struggle in some form beforehand or during.
Yeah, I mean, suffering is an integral part of it, because they're trying to achieve something which isn't easy.
Or even thought to be possible.
Yeah.
So I think, especially with Mike Hartley's record, it wasn't thought, like I think John and Damian both said, they didn't know whether it was even possible to break that time, because, and I think, and Damian said quite, I mean, Mike is an incredibly talented and fast runner, like super quick, not I think he says, not kind of some warhorse slogging it out.
I think that's exactly how Damian puts it.
Yeah, he was quick, like really, really quick in the world, and on a kind of an elite level athlete. And
all the people that we'd seen who had taken it on, it wasn't like they were, I was like 15 minutes under or half an hour or whatever. They didn't even often get past halfway. Like, that's the sort of the level of difficulty that it was set at.
I think you communicate that very well in Totally FKT as well. And anyone who's listening to this and is going to go on and watch it really, really should. That you really do show a tremendous amount of respect for that record, for Mike Hartley's record. And John and Damian both communicate a lot of respect for it as well. That what they were trying to do here was a big record, not just because the Pennine Way is very long, very difficult, very wet and boggy, very, very exposed for very long periods of time. It's also an exceptionally tough record that they're going to take on. That Mike Hartley was an incredible athlete at that point. Again, you can't show how big a victory that was when they each break the record without showing how much they suffered and sacrificed on the run into it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, there you go then. That's why you've got to point the camera at someone when they're throwing up, surely. If you aren't aware that it's been a terrible struggle for them to get to the finish line, then it doesn't mean as much when they get there. And if there's one thing that I get a tremendous reward out of working behind the scenes on races and stuff like that, I feel like I owe it to the runners to be there for those moments because of how much they've sacrificed to be there.
Look at it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it can't ever. I've done plenty of jobs that have just become a job. You know, it's just a thing you turn up to do. But it doesn't feel like a job when I turn the camera on when someone finishes one of these events. I owe them this, and I want to be there for it. And we're going to capture this moment that they've been. Because for me, it might be the 10th day I've been on the job in a row. For them, it's the one time maybe that they're going to do this thing ever.
Yeah.
I think you've really hit the nail on the head. A lot of it, you know, when people take part in events and they come back and their friends and family what was it like? What was it like? And there's only so much. There's such a level that you can explain over a pint, you know, in a pub, of what the experience was like. And it feels special to be able to create the content that people can go, right, I'll tell you my personal experience over a pint. Now watch this. This is what I did. I did this.
Yeah.
And you know, trying to get across what that experience is like it's, especially if it's something that's really different. So, like, you know, the spine race is a difficult one to get across because it is such an extreme experience to have. And moving right across, like, as we cover some adventure racing events, and like I definitely recommend anyone that likes ultra distance events or long distance events to sort of have a look at them, because trying to explain to people that, so tell me about adventure racing. Like, we covered Iterra, the last Iterra, whatever year that was, 2019.
Yes, 2020 was a write-off, so 2019.
Yeah, I think it was. Anyway, the last Iterra, and so Iterra, 600k course. It was all around Scotland. It's multidiscipline. It's, you're constant. I think there was 12 stages where you're flipping between like bikes, kayaks, hiking, with checkpoints that had canyoning, that had all these different activities. And
it's non-stop, wasn't it?
Yeah, non-stop race. Like, people were falling asleep riding mountain bikes. They were like kayaking. They linked together the most ridiculously awesome places in Scotland, and these teams are going out there and taking it on. And like explaining it to you guys now, it's really difficult to convey what it's like, the enormity of it, what's involved. And so I hope that we go some way, at least, to doing justice to showing what goes on out there, because it's flipping awesome. I nearly swore then. That's great.
Oh, no, you're okay. You can swear if you want to. You'd made a really good point as well. That would have been a good full stop. Robbie Britton swore and farted 5 minutes into the first episode of this we ever recorded. So we started low and went down. Don't worry about that. But no, I think your point there is absolutely right. And I talked before about the fact that you can tell from the stuff that you produce that you have a tremendous amount of passion for the outdoors. It's obvious as well that you have a tremendous amount of passion for these types of races and for these types of feats of endurance and the people that do them. But how did you get here? Let's go back a little bit. Let's talk about actual Summit Fever. How did this begin? How did you end up standing ankle deep in freezing mud or in the snow, waiting for runners to come over the hill?
So, started back in 2012, and we knew we wanted to work in the outdoors creatively, and we started off by Matt did a lot of trail races. And so had quite a good, had some contacts with some race directors, and we said, can we come and do some race photography? And then, so that was back in 2012, and it was just when Facebook was allowing you to not even embed YouTube videos, but to put a link to a YouTube video into, can you remember back in the dark days?
Oh, my days, yeah. Yeah,
that was, and one of the a race director said to us, I don't suppose you can film the race, could you? And we were like, yes.
quickly search on YouTube. I think
how to film a race.
Yeah, we had done sort of filming stuff before, just like personal stuff, like filming climbing trips and
so we had
hikes and stuff. So we did have a sort of basic understanding, but we were like, okay, yeah, we can see a route here. This could work.
And then I think Facebook started allowing you to embed the YouTube videos.
Yeah.
And that's when it seemed to kind of grow in.
Yeah. And the race directors really started to see value.
I mean, look at how the scene has changed since the time you're talking about. It's utterly ridiculous. I literally hadn't heard of ultra running until about 2014, and suddenly now you can stop someone in the street and they might not know a lot about it, but they know it exists. They know that these feats of endurance are happening out there, and that's something that's really only happened in the last 7 or 8 years, while social media has been allowing this type of content to be shared. So it really opened the door for, idiots like us to marry together loving the outdoors and building this kind of creative content that we all really enjoy making.
Yeah,
I interrupted your story then completely. So sorry.
It was a great opportunity, and it allowed, I think, it allowed people to make careers in what was maybe traditionally a really difficult industry, like to film media, photography. That kind of creative industry it felt very enclosed and shut off, and it felt very kind of a million miles away from something you would actually be able to get a foot in the door to. And this just, I think with social media, it's allowed everybody no matter what your budget, really, to be able to take some steps into this world of creativity, of being able to document and make a living and create things, which is wonderful, and tell these stories.
Yeah, we were lucky. I guess a big part of it has been we were lucky to come into the industry at a time where technology was making it possible, or made it possible, for like small groups of people, like companies like ourselves, to be able to start to produce content which reflected in some form or another the coverage that traditionally was only available to, the classic Tour de France, World Cup, big, Formula One sporting events. Whereas then it was, I remember using like the early GoPros and those kind of the first bits of technology that came in. And it wasn't just the technology that we were using, the cameras, but also, like Ellie mentioned, the technology for sharing and viewing this content. The fact that,
you didn't need a contract with the BBC to be able to get people to see your content.
That's exactly what I was going to say. An equivalent of Totally FKT made of Mike Hartley's attempt would have taken a company the size of the BBC and probably tens of thousands of budget and a crew of 100 to put together. Whereas now we're in an age where a crew of 3 or 4 people that don't mind a little sleep deprivation can film it themselves.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant. It's so exciting it's so exciting for all the different companies and for people thinking of doing something in this kind of media niche. There's so many opportunities. It's just, love it. Everybody. It's exciting.
So what was this, when did you join the Spine then? How did that happen? Because that's how I became aware of who Summit Fever are, is hearing that theme tune for the daily videos, and you and the Spine seemed to come hand in hand in me when I first met you.
That was 2012, I think you
so
cold called.
Yeah, I remember. So this was back at a time where I was looking at races to do, and I'd heard about the Spine race. I can't remember where from exactly, but I'd heard about the Spine race, and I watched basically watched the first race take place, not in person. I just saw photos and stuff, and heard reports from people in 2012. And after that, it was early days for us as a company, and I thought, you know what, that would be an ace race to be part of. And if we can get in when it's early, this is going to be something great one day. Not that it wasn't then, but it's going to go places. And so I remember very vividly ringing up. I was stood at my parents' house, and I remember ringing up Scott and having a conversation with him, and just basically saying, "Oh, look, we really like the race. Do you mind if we come along, take some photos?" And we did the photos for the first couple of years, and then that led us into, over that time we were developing the filming side, and then 14, so 15, we actually made 2015 we made a documentary on the race. That was when we met Mike Hartley and spoke to Ranulph Fiennes. We spoke to Professor Mike Tipton of Cold Weather Research Laboratory in Plymouth, Portsmouth. Sorry, I'm not very good with things like that. And it's kind of snowballed from there. But that first phone call, I still remember like it happened yesterday.
Wow! And look where you are now. That's very cool. I know, not limited as a Spine, you guys have filmed some in some incredible places. What would you say? And for a moment, let's focus on what I said earlier wasn't a big part of this. The actual pointy end of the stick. Where is the most awesome place you've filmed, do you think?
You first.
My favourite has to be the Hardangervidda Plateau in Norway in February. And it was on an expedition race, and I was stationed in and around this hut, and it felt like I was in the middle of a snow desert. And there was a big snowstorm all around this hut. And I was with a safety team of Norwegians, and their English was limited, and my Norwegian went to, I think it was Yai, Nai, and Sultan, which is hungry. And at one point there was this, it felt a little bit like, I think it was on the second or third day in, and we're all living around this tiny fire in this hut. And it felt almost a bit like an initiation ceremony. And one of them said to me, Sultan. And it was sorry for vegans or vegetarians, but it was a raw reindeer heart.
Oh.
And I was like, I thought, I can't say no. I'm in this situation in the middle of this snow desert. There's no phone signal, there's no reception. I've no idea where I was working with Matt and Steve Ashworth, and they were kind of, I don't know, miles and miles, tens of miles in different directions. And I thought, what do I do? And I was surrounded by these kind of big, scary-looking Norwegians. I was like, okay, yeah. They cut me a little slither, and they were watching me to see what I was going to do. And I thought, this is some kind of I've got to do it. Down it went. Anyway, but it was just an incredible experience.
Well, what was the reindeer heart like? You got to tell us.
Reindeer heart. Actually, it was okay. It was a lot tasty.
Chewy?
No, it was a bit like it was like a bit like a tuna steak. That's the only, I know it's a bit random, and I've not had a tuna steak for years and years and years, but It was that kind of texture. Anyway, I'm really sorry for vegans and vegetarians. I don't eat reindeer heart normally.
Oh, it's quite all right. I just, you know what, this podcast has taken me to some weird places from time to time, but hearing you describe eating a raw reindeer heart in the middle of an ice desert is it's just an absolute delight. Thank you for that. That's not what I expected this morning to shape up like.
It felt... is the word primeval. I don't know.
Look, I've said Game of Thrones a couple of times on this episode. It feels like a scene from that. That's outrageous.
It felt like it. Like I'd walk outside, and I mean, walking outside was a big deal. You know, every time a racer came up, everything had to go on. I mean, even going to the loo because that was like the loo. It wasn't a loo. It was kind of like a thing that you went and did your stuff in.
Toilet hut.
Yeah. But it was like everything was a massive deal. It was the first time really that I'd been somewhere that cold, that really, really cold. That really
Such a signal.
Yeah. Oh, and so my job there was to create social media snippets and then try and get them back to the HQ where the media manager was sending them out. So we've got on the back of, to do this, there was a guy there with a snowmobile. So I hopped on the back of the snowmobile, and on the back of the snowmobile, he had a brush, like a sweeping brush. On top of this sweeping brush was like a little satellite. So he would drive us up he'd take us for a 20-minute drive up to the highest part of the plateau, and we'd stand there. He would take this brush off the back of his snowmobile and start wandering around while I followed him with my phone, trying to get enough signal to be able to send these social media clips back to the HQ.
Wow.
So that was sorry. That went on for a long time, that story, but it was really good. Sorry.
I hear you. I can relate to that. I remember one of my jobs a couple of years ago, we were in Namibia covering the Desert Ultra there, and we were having to send back the same sort of thing. Any photos or little social media clips, I was sending back via satellite uplink. And at the end of the race, all I needed to get out was a post because the signal was terrible there. Just, here's the winner, someone has won, these are the times of the people at the top, just to get something out. And it was taking hours because we were relying on a satellite, coming over while we were at the bottom of this big ravine. I remember about 3:45 in the morning, I'd been awake for 26 hours. I was sitting in a 4x4 just listening to the beep of the transceiver, trying to limp this signal through. And I fell asleep where I was sat and fell out of the 4x4 into the sand. But once I'd picked myself up and literally dusted myself off, I remember going up to my laptop sat on the roof of the truck, and it had just sent through. I was like, you know what?
Yes.
For that reason, this was worth it.
Yeah. It's so funny, isn't it? And those moments stick with you. I bet that's
yeah. I'll never forget waking up face down in the dust at 4:00 in the morning that day. It was worth it.
Yeah. Oh.
Go on then, Matt. What about you? Where's the best location you've ended up filming?
I think it's probably between iTerror and another adventure race we worked on called Untamed New England, which is on the east coast of the States. And the reason being, adventure racing of that scale, so like the week-long adventure races, they're able to take the route, because they're doing multidiscipline, they're able to take the route to places that are just absolutely ridiculous. Like you might be able on an ultra, you might be able to string one or two of these together, or on like a bike packing race, you might be able to string some of them together. But they were hitting together like some of the biggest, most incredible features. And I vividly remember like the first stage of Untamed New England. It started in this. It started from the ski resort. It was during summer, and it's near the area called it's like one of the most remote areas of the Appalachian Trail. And there's a basically like open ski slope and then very, very dense forest. And there were 8 checkpoints between the start and the first transition onto bike, which was the other side of the forest. And I think it was something like maybe 20k. Like, it wasn't big distance wise, but this forest was so dense. Like there probably wasn't more than a meter or so between all the trees and the shrubs. Like, it was seriously hard going to move through, and so much foliage over the top, it was almost like black inside. And there was one team the first team that got through it, took a few hours, like maybe 5 hours or something to come through it, and managed to get through it. One of the teams at the back, 32 hours on that stage. Wow. 32 hours, because I was talking to one of the safety team. They said, right, this forest, if you go south, you'll eventually get out of the forest, but you'll still have to find a long time to get to the right place. You'll get out of the forest. If you go north, we won't see you for like 3 weeks, because it's basically just dense forest for well over 100 miles.
Wow.
But it felt like a proper adventure. Like, when I think back to when I was a kid, I don't know, like 8 years old, 10 years old, sat at home Sunday mornings watching Transworld Sport. I would watch like adventure racing, and I was hypnotized by it, by the fact that you could, on one event, you could basically do this like crazy adventure of scaling mountains, like biking through these big forests, like kayaking over these like lakes and through the sea. And it was like, it was like a dream event. And then, going to work on it. If I'm honest, I think going to work on the adventure races that we've done has been what's pushed me to take part myself in adventure racing. So since then I've raced in them myself, because I just working on it, you're like, oh my god, this is so awesome.
Yeah, I hear you. There's no getting out of it. I ran my first ultramarathon within a couple of years of finding out what an ultramarathon was. Like, once I'd started working around this area, there was eventually you're going to go in and do it yourself.
Yeah.
Well, that's the hope, isn't it? We keep immersing ourselves in this stuff, and it inspires us to get more and more involved in it. You kind of hope that it inspires other people to get more involved in it as well.
Yeah, I think it's coming back to kind of quoting Damian again, and it's, I don't know, it's almost heightens that feeling of being alive, because you feel such extremes, I think, especially in ultra running, and you see people going through such extremes, and I think Damian said at one point, Damian, a few years ago when we interviewed him, he said, it makes you feel alive, even that suffering, even the pain that brings life into such a vivid color, if that makes sense.
It's simplified.
It's simplified, but heightens everything, heightens your awareness, and simplifies at the same time.
Like modern life is so like one of Damian's favourite quotes is, "It's the antidote to modern life."
And it is. It's true.
Yeah, and all right, I'll give it to him. He's right. But like modern life is full, like,
so complicated.
Humans didn't develop how we've developed to work out tax bills and collecting nectar points.
You can tell it's nearly tax time of the year.
Like, no, like and particularly running, like that, the book Born to Run Away, it couldn't be more right. We were literally, our bodies are designed to run. Like, when you run, you are literally doing, it's like using a hammer to hammer things in. That's what it's made to do.
But I think also, with modern life, Damian again, it gets in the way, doesn't it? It almost clouds things. It's your mind's cluttered of, tax is coming up, Christmas is coming up, I've got to do this, I've got to book my eye test, I've got to, all these modern, or not modern, but just all these things that life accumulates. And then as soon as you start running, first of all, it's out of all the sports to do, it's one of the most accessible and cheapest. But you just get out there, put some trainers on, and it's just plod, 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 run, faster, faster, slower, slower, whatever speed you go, or whatever speed you want to go. That's all you got to do. And it's just thinking about, I've got to get to that tree. Get to that tree. Oh, look, I'm going to get to that stream. And that's it. And slowly your mind clears, and everything's just like, not always, but sometimes, most of the time, a lot of time it helps.
No, I get what you mean. You're absolutely right. Like, what I see people get out of these events so often during them is being entirely in that place, in that moment. And there isn't room to be thinking about anywhere else. And in the moments when you're suffering, where it's difficult in these endurance events, and they're about enduring, you are absolutely focused on that moment in time, and that in itself is a big part of the reason why people come back and do it all over again, is to get back into that mindset. Even if they are suffering in that time, they are entirely in that place, in that moment, focused on what's happening to them, and often in very, very beautiful places. And you get to show that struggle, you get to show those beautiful places. And maybe if I'm sitting in front of Totally FKT for 52 minutes watching that's 52 minutes where I'm not thinking about tax bills and washing up and what I've got to do at work tomorrow. So thank you for creating that. Before we wrap up then, Totally FKT, where can people watch it?
So
time to plug.
So, well, you can still watch the premiere, which was hosted by Kendall Mountain Festival and presented by Jack Brassington. And that's on the Kendall Mountain Festival website. And it also features a Q&A with John and Damian and ourselves. And the bonus feature of that is the presentation of the Long Distance Award from the Fell Running Association. I won't tell you who got it. You just have to watch it and find out, or you can Google it.
Yeah.
And then it's also,
don't Google it.
Yeah, it's also available to view on Amazon Video if you're in the US or the USA or the UK, US and USA, and worldwide on Vimeo.
Ideal. There we go. Look it up. And just before we disappear, it's not often you get to reflect on your own work in this way. What's your favourite part of the documentary?
I think my favourite part is when one of the support teams, a guy called Jess, is in the van at Tan Hill, and he's talking about his vegan pasta. It just cracks me up. I just find it funny. I know that's not probably what I should say. It's probably the bit where, I don't know, John's collapsing or Damian's reaching the finish line, but I just love that humour. He was so funny all the time. He's brilliant, wasn't he?
Those little human moments are often what you remember after big adventures, though, aren't they?
Yeah.
They really are.
It wasn't. So yeah, sadly, it wasn't like something very exciting, but it was just the humour in that moment just was brilliant. It summed up the kind of the camaraderie and the support bubbles around these big things.
I think for me it was when we met Kathy Fawkes on. It was just near Greenhead, start of Hadrian's Wall, west side of Hadrian's Wall, and like the nature of these things is on the trail you bump into people, sometimes that you organise and sometimes that you don't. And she was just a through hiker that was on the trail hiking it herself, and she was what an incredible person. First British woman to
first British woman
to get the Triple Crown. Yeah, so,
I remember
Pacific
Crest.
Yeah,
I can't remember what the third one is.
It's a staggering CV that she outlines when you go into it, and then she proceeds to have a pop at Damian for not carrying his own kit.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and like
only in a comedy way, to be clear to everyone listening. But yeah, I loved that as a moment. That was great.
Yeah, and just things like that are just things that you could never plan for, and they're just a really beautiful part of documentary filmmaking. These lovely little surprises that sort of come along the way.
It's the people that you meet.
Yeah, and I without going too far back in time here, we didn't really cover very much of how much coverage the support teams get in Totally FKT. And I've got a lot of respect for how much respect you show them and how much you do show it as sort of a quite a team thing. You've got these two athletes who are very much at the pointy end of what's happening, but these big teams around them facilitating what they do. And it was lovely to see a platform for Nikki Ligo as well.
Oh, yes. Oh, I love Nikki Ligo.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. Hi, Nikki.
Hi, Nikki.
No, but wonderful. Well, you know what? I'd been looking forward to doing an interview with you guys, and I'm really glad we did. That was really interesting stuff. So thank you very much for talking to me today.
Thanks for having us. It's been fun.
It's been really good.
Yeah, and I look forward to seeing you somewhere bonkers soon.
Yes, definitely.